Your TMO greetings. We're just waiting for a couple of people to jump in. This is going to be a short. Okay. All right, let me just pull up one thing and then we're going to get started. Okay, so your TMO greetings, say everybody. We thank you for jumping on with us. Quick presentation. Hold on a second. Hold on one second. I want to make sure this is all right. We just wanted to talk about a certain aspect of the HEP, which is also called the Summer Solstice, in connection with Juneteenth. So you look at this image we have on the screen, and what we're looking at, of course, is the so-called Juneteenth flag. It's representative of, the burst of the sun and so forth. And the reason why that's important, there are times of the year for us that are sacred for Afuraitkaitnit people, and we've maintained these ritual practices from when we were in Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, and forced into the Western Hemisphere. So there are certain times of the year, the equinoxes and the solstices, as well as the midpoints between the equinoxes and solstices, that we've always observed. So we did a course on the elemental clans of the yearly cycle. That's one of the courses that we put forward. And we were talking about the different forces in creation that govern the equinoxes and solstices and the midpoints. So, for example, let me pull up this book real quick. Okay, so what we have is, for example, spring is Ra and Rait, which they govern the spring section. Shu and Tefnut govern summer, these forces in creation as their popular names in ancient Kanit and Kemet. You have Ra and Rait governing the winter solstice. Shu and Tefnut governing the summer, beginning of summer and the summer season and so forth, with the summer solstice in that context. Ra and Rait for the spring. Ra and Rait for the winter solstice. Hold on one second. Let me pull up another document so you can see it. Let's take a minute to open. Okay. Okay, let me just switch over real quick and show you the names of these divinities in the language of ancient Kanit and Kemet so you can see what we're addressing. So what you see is Atem and Atemit. The male divinity Atem, the female divinity is Atemit. They govern not only the sun set, but that's also akin to the autumn equinox. And we talk about the divinity Atem. He's operating through the red setting sun and sets in the Western hemisphere and goes into the underworld and so forth, and the solar boat and so forth. And the female divinity, Asasi Nebedetepet, which is the wife of Atem, also called Atemit. That's also the origin of the term autumn. But Atem and Atemit, they govern that closing of the day. Also, the sun setting and penetrating, akin to a seed being planted in the ground. Then you have a title of all stars, Urt and Urt-Hat, the one of the still heart and so forth. And that's Ur and Urdu, that's the time of the winter. And then you have Aset in her capacity as wife, the feminine balance of that Urt and so forth. She's the one who resurrects Alsar. But they govern the winter solstice, and one of the most dominant constellations in the wintertime, of course, is Sa, which is Orion, which is Sahu, as we call in ancient Kemet, governed by the divinity Alsar, but Alsar and Aset operating through the winter solstice and governing that point. Then you have so you see the Urt-Hat, still of heart, to be rest, to be motionless and so forth, the setting of a star and all of that. But that's talking about, of course, the death and resurrection of Alsar, but also the solstice. The term solstice means the soul, Latin for sun. Stis is standing. So when the sun rises in the east and then sets in the west and so forth, you know, at the time of the summer solstice, it has its highest arc, the highest point in the sky, and then, you know, sets in the west. So it's the longest day of the year, 15 hours of sunlight, 9 hours of darkness and so forth. But as the days become shorter, that arc, instead of going all the way up and all the way down, is a shorter arc, a shorter arc, a shorter arc, into the point where you get to the winter solstice, where it's the shortest arc, stops right here, and then sets. And there are 15 hours of darkness, 9 hours of sunlight. The winter solstice, the shortest day of the year and so forth. So when that very short arc, when the sun rises and hits that point and then sets and so forth, that's the shortest arc. But once it hits that point, then it starts increasing. The arc gets higher and higher and higher to the point where you're at spring, where it's halfway in between the highest arc and the lowest. And that is the spring equinox. 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness and so forth. And then day after day, the sunlight increases, meaning the arc gets higher and higher until it hits the summer solstice, the highest arc point in the sky, 15 hours of sunlight, 9 hours of darkness, the sun sets and so forth. And then once it hits that point, then it starts coming back down. And as it's coming back down, it hits the midpoint once again. That is the autumn equinox, equal nights, 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness, around September 22nd, 23rd. And then it gets shorter, the days get shorter and shorter until it hits that arc at the bottom, winter solstice. It hits that arc, you know, around December 20th, 21st. It hits that point, and then it turns back and goes back up. So, and of course, the summer solstice is around June 20th, in this hemisphere around June 20th, June 21st. So, Kepra or Kepri is the male divinity. Keprit is the female divinity. Many people have heard of Kepra, but they don't know who Keprit is. That's the feminine scarab, beetle, and so forth, governing Keprit, which in Coptic becomes Sheprit, and in English becomes Sepri, Shepring, or Sepring, or spring, and so forth. But that's when the, you know, equal nights happens. So you have Atem and Atemet govern autumn. You have then you have Asar and Aset as Urt and Urt-Het and so forth, being governing the winter solstice. and that period and so forth. Then you have Kepri and Keprit, or Kepra and Keprit and so forth. And that is, the spring equinox. And then you have Shu and Tefnut. And as you notice, Atem and Atemet, origin of the term autumn. Urt and Urdu, Urt Hat, the title of Alsar is the one of the still heart because the sun is standing still at the solstice. And that's part of the death and resurrection of Alsar, hitting the still point and then going back up, hitting that lowest arc, the burial point, and then starting to rise back up and so forth towards the spring and summer. But the still one of heart, the sun stands still for a few days, and then, the sunlight begins to increase. So the sunlight is decreasing from the fall, minute by minute by minute, day by day, to the point where you have the lowest point, and then it stays at that point for a couple of days, and then on the third day, the sun begins to increase once again. So that's also dying and being buried and resurrected and so forth. The whole notion of the fictional character Jesus resurrecting on the third day is associated with that, as well as the spring equinox. But the sun, soul, which we call Aten, Atenita in ancient Kemet, but soul in Latin, solstice. The sun stands, solstice. It stands at that bottom arc point, December 20th, 21st, for a few days. And by December 25th, the new sun is born. The sun is born on December 25th. That's where they get that notion from, of course, where they stole it from Heru and Alsar and Alset. And it begins to increase until the point you get to, spring and summer. But Urdu is the origin of the term wurt, and wunet became winter and so forth. And we go through the entire etymology in the Proto-Indo-European language phylum to show that winter and wint and weret comes from wurt in ancient Kemet, a title of Alsar governing the winter solstice. Atim and Atemet, who govern the setting of the sun, but also the beginning of autumn and so forth. Atem, Atemet, origin of the term autumn. Kepra and Keprit, or Kepri and Keprit become Shepri and Sheperit in Coptic, and Sepering and spring in English and so forth. And then you have Shemu, and of course, to become hot and so forth. That is the time of the year when it's hot and so forth. And about 5,000 years ago, things have shifted because of the precession of the equinoxes. But about 5,000 years ago, that point of the beginning of the hot and watery period of the inundation and so forth, it coincided, and also the heliacal rising of Sapati, the so-called Sirius, the brightest star in the sky. Now that happens, that star rises around early August in this region of the world. But 5,000 years ago, that star rose, the highest point, the brightest star in the sky, Sapati, which they call Sirius or Sothis. And the star rose up, then that was the beginning of the flooding of the river and so forth. 5,000 years ago, that happened at the same time of the summer solstice. Because of the precession of the equinoxes, over time, over the past few thousand years, it's crept, day by day by day. And now around August, early August, that's when, the star Sapatit, so-called Sirius, but Sapatit rises high in the sky. The flooding of the river happens and so forth. And that's the beginning of the inundation period. But back then, it was co-equal with the summer solstice. And so the Mesut Ra, as they would say, the birth of Ra, took place at that particular point. So the Shemu, the hot, watery period of the, summer of the inundation in Kemet, Shemu became Semu as summer and so forth. And that's the origin of the term. So we did an entire course on this. This is just giving you a little bit of background information. So you have the Shema, Shemaet, and Shemu, and so forth, titles of Shu and Tefnut when they're operant, governing that hot period of the year and so forth. So you have Shu and Tefnut governing the summer season and so forth. You have Kepra and Kepri governing the spring season. You have Atim and Atimet governing the autumn season. You have, Asar and Aset as Urat and Urhat and so forth, governing the winter season. So these are natural cycles. We've always honored them, just like animals align themselves with the different seasons of the year. You see bears go into hibernation. You see the Nile crocodile go into estivation. And let me pull that document up real quick just so you can see an image of that. Hold on 1 second. And we talked about this in a recent broadcast, which is on our channel when we're talking about male and female balance and Susu and meditation. Okay. So this is from one of our retreats that we do yearly. This is one of the documents that we have put forward. You see Hapi and Merit. And this is the male divinity, Hapi, of the river. And this is Merit, the female divinity of the river, but they also govern the river blood and the body and so forth. Within Afuraitkaini people in particular. So we were talking about the inundation of the river. And we were also talking about how one of the sacred animal totems and divinities, the Nile crocodile, Sobek, goes into a period of what they call estivation, similar to hibernation with bears when they go into a stupor for a number of months and so forth. The Nile crocodile embeds itself in the Nile mud for a number of, weeks and so forth, and is in that estivation, hibernation stage. So just like that takes place with bears, with crocodiles, with birds flying south for the winter and so forth, squirrels, building up their inventory of nuts and so forth for the winter. Just like we align ourselves with the change in the seasons and the energetic output of the seasons, we take advantage of that. The way we dress, the kind of plant life and mineral life that we procure and utilize to make medicines and so forth, as well as, to nourish ourselves and strengthen ourselves and empower ourselves and so forth. We live in harmony with the shifts of the Earth's cycle. We've always done that. We invoke the forces in nature that govern the different seasons, and we take that dispensation of energy to purify ourselves, strengthen ourselves, overcome specific obstacles, perceived or real and so forth. We've always done that. So we've always included that in part of our ritual practice. So the time of, and let's look at the terminology quickly. I'm going to show you this. The reason we have this image structured in the way that we do. So, of course, that's the Juneteenth flag. But it so happens that Juneteenth happens around one of our sacred observances that we've been engaged in the practice of for thousands of years, which is the day before, the summer solstice and so forth. And the summer solstice can be the June 20th to June 21st, depending on the day. And of course, in this calendar, they have leap years and things get shifted sometimes. So, but we also have the terminology here, the term HEP or HEP in ancient Kemet, referencing the solstice. We're also going to get into Ra, the creator of the universe. And this, of course, is Rait, the creatress of the universe, female counterpart of Ra. There's always a balance and so forth. So Okay, so I'm going to switch over to this. This document. Okay. So you see HEP or HEP, to turn around to retrace a path. And then you have HEP, turning, solstice. And then they have the dual, because there are two solstices, of course. There's the summer solstice and the winter solstice. So when you look at that term HEP or HEP, to turn to retrace a path, we just showed exactly why. So you can see the two legs walking in this fashion back to retrace, to turn back, and so forth. So you see the two legs walking to turn back. You're going back to the place that you came from. Now, we talked about the arc being very short. When the sun rises in the east, hits the peak, and then sets in the west. It's a short arc, which only takes 9 hours to cross, 9 hours of daytime, and then 15 hours of darkness at the winter solstice. So that arc point, the high point, is here. But by the time you get to summer, that's December 20th, 21st, and so forth. By the time you get to summer, as we said, the sun rises in the east. It's the highest point around June 20th, June 21st. The highest point, the highest arc. It takes 15 hours for sunrise to go all the way to sunset, the longest day of the year, and so forth. So it hits that highest point. But then by June 23rd, 24th, 25th, that point gets lower and lower and lower and lower until by the time you get to December 20th, it's at the lowest point. But when it gets to this point, it hits this point, and then it turns back, HEP. Then it hits the lowest point in December, and then it turns back, HEP, and goes to the highest point and keeps turning back. When it hits the high points and low points, it goes back, HEP, to turn back, HEP, a turning point, HEP, as you can see here, a solstice. The sun stands, but we say HEP, it hits a point and then it returns. HEP, it hits a point and then it returns. So let's look at Ra and Rait quickly, and then we want to talk about the association with the turning point, the solstices being a turning point, and ritually how we can take advantage of that through Susu, through meditation. So this is one of the books I've published. I've published, as we said, 31 books so far. All 31 of the books I've published are free downloads from our website. So you can download this book as well as the others and so forth. In this particular book, we were showing that Ra, the creator of the universe, and Rait, the creatress of the universe, are the divinities. In the Akan language, they are called Yonkumpon and Yonkunton. And in ancient Kemet, they're called Ra and Rait. So the book is about that. It talks about their cosmology as well, but we were proving, since we practice the Akan tradition as Akan people, we're showing in the Akan language what are the names of Ra and Rait. We also show, for those who are Ewe by ancestry or Yoruba by ancestry and so forth, we show the names in the Yoruba tradition, Odumare and Oshumare, and Ewe is Da and Idahuedo and so forth, but we show that in the book as well. And for those who are Akan, whose ancestry is from Ghana and Ivory Coast, when we were forced into the Western Hemisphere, we continued Akan ancestry religion under the Akan term Hoodoo. And we have a number of different books and articles about the Hoodoo tradition. And we just released a documentary film called Hoodoo, Akan Ancestry Religion in North America. You can look on our YouTube page. It's you can watch it's a full feature-length documentary film, and you can check that out on our page. So as we said, this is Ra, this is Rait, creator and creatress. Ra and Rait are the creator and creatress, divine living energy, animating all created entities. The divine life force energy within you, the solar fire force that is circulating through your being and so forth, that is the energy of Ra and Rait. And those who are Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people, we can communicate with, be possessed by the divinities, including Ra and Rait. But if you look at your body as a great being, as an Afuraitkaitnit woman, microcosmic level, you are an emanation of the great mother divinity, the feminine expression of the supreme being, Amenet. You see Amenet sitting right here. As an Afurakani man, African Black man, you are an emanation on a microcosmic level of the great male expression of the supreme being, which is Amen. So here you have Amen and Amenet, also called Amen Ra and Amenet Rait, but Amen and Amenet sitting together. They are the two halves of the great divine whole that we call the supreme being. And every Afuraitkaitnit ethnic group has a name for them in their culture. So in Vodun, they say, instead of saying Amen, they call him Lisa. They call Amenet Mawu. In Yoruba, they call Amen Olorun. They call Amenet Olokun. In Akan, they call Amen Nyame. And Amenet, they call Nyamewa. In Senufo, they call Amen Kolotiolo. They call Amenet Kateelio. So they're the great being. And just like your physical body, you're the great being. But then you have life force energy circulating through your being that you can direct to your hands, legs, feet to move, or to your reproductive organs to go out and create a child. The creative force within you is your Ra force if you're the male, Rait force if you're the female. The divine living energy operant within the great divine body of Amen and Amenet are Ra and Rait. Ra and Rait are the grandchildren of Amen and Amenet. The creator and creatress are the grandchildren of the supreme being, the great mother and great father, supreme being. So we've always had that proper understanding of the difference between the creator and creatress, who are subordinate to the great mother and great father, supreme being. Just like you're a great being and you direct your life force energy to work for you, to create for you, to heal for you and so forth, to connect with other individuals for you and so forth. Amen and Amenet direct Ra and Rait as their creative power to create the universe and sustain. So and so we show, of course, in the Akan language, Inyame, Amen is Inyamewa, Amenet, and so forth. And you find the name Inyame, which is Amen. You'll find that across Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, Inyame and Akan, Inyambe amongst the Losi and Zambia, Njambe, the Herero of Namibia, and Zambi amongst the Bakongo, and Zame amongst the Fang and Gabon and Cameroon and so forth. So across the board, you'll find Amen, Amen, Nyame, Njame, Nzame, across the board. So all across the continent, people are still invoking the great divinity by the same name. So we show the Medutu, the hieroglyphs, dealing with them, but you see they both wear the solar disc on the head. Sometimes the sun sets in the west and it takes a reddish tint and so forth. And sometimes, of course, the solar disc looks golden. So you will see the reddish form and the golden form and so forth. And very often you'll also see that represented in Kemet with the male looking reddish brown and the female looking golden and so forth. And that not only has to do with the setting sun and the rising sun and so forth, the reddish and the golden, but also when you look internally with your bone marrow that carries that, facilitates the movement of that life force energy, you have the red bone marrow and the yellow bone marrow. And when you look at the qualities of that, the red is the masculine and the yellow is the feminine and so forth. So this is where those sacred color schemes come from. So we talk about some cosmology here, but when we talk about light shining through a prism, broken up to a rainbow, when sunlight is refracted by rain or mist, is broken up into a rainbow and so forth. We talk about the ancient symbolism of this, rainbows surrounding the sun, as well as the rainbow surrounding the moon, the sun halo, the moon halo, and so forth. But the circular serpent encircling the solar disk, this as the spelling for the name Ra. This is how you spell Ra in ancient Kemet, and then Ra with the T, Ra et. This is the original Medud or hieroglyphic symbol in nature. You have dual rainbows representative of Ra and Rait, the rainbow serpent. We show in the language of the Akan, and Yonkumpon means the circular pon, Nyanka or Nanka serpent, and Nyonkunton is the arched Nton, Nanka or serpent, the sacred animal totem for Ra and Rait. In Vodun, you have the same principle. The two rainbow serpents, serpent swallowing its tail. Da is the male serpent. Aidahuedo is the female serpent. The spiritual forces operant within these sacred animal totems and so forth. Da in Vodun is Ra in ancient Kemet, and Aidahuedo is Rait. So, and we also show that Odumare is the creative power in Yoruba. Oshumare is the circular rainbow serpent swallowing its tail and so forth. That is Odumare and Oshumare is Ra and Rait. In Yonkumpon and Yonkunton and Akan is Ra and Rait. Da and Aidahuedo and Vodun is Ra and Rait, the Creator and Creatress. And that's important in the context of the Mesut. Ra is a time of the year. Now it's pushed over into August, but a few thousand years ago, it was co-equal with the time of the year of the summer solstice, and this is why it was called Mesut Ra, or the birth of Ra, as well as Mesut Rait, the birth of Rait. That's that point of the summer solstice. So one of the titles of Ra is Ra Aku, or Ra, the illuminate one, the shining one, illuminate one. Aku means to shine or bright or illuminous. One of the titles of the honored ancestresses and ancestors are the Aku and Akutu, the illuminate or shining ones and so forth. Not only illuminate in the sense of, spiritually, if you're in darkness and someone who has wisdom, they can light your path, give you illumination or wisdom, enlighten you. But also when they're shown as the great ancestresses and ancestors, shown as stars in the sky, and the stars are called Aku and Akut and so forth, and they're the lit stars. It's not because we came from the stars or any nonsense like that or some foolishness about extraterrestrialism. When you have an illuminate individual, meaning that they're spiritually cultivated, they have a vibrant, shining, luminant aura. If someone is sick or, spiritually uncultivated, their aura is not bright, it's not vibrant, it's not large. If you see it clairvoyantly, it's dark, it's murky, it's closer to the body, it's dim and so forth. But if someone is, powerful, spiritually cultivated, they have a big, shining, bright, luminous, vibrant aura. And if you see that clairvoyantly, a spirit like that operating within, in your space, that's akin to, a star in the sky, literally. So they have that vibrant energy, literally. But Ra is called Ra Aku, the illuminate one. And Akut, fire. Aku, to be bright, shining, splendid, glorious, and so forth, excellent. Aku, brilliance, radiance, light, splendor. Aku, a title of the sun, the Aten, but also Ra, as well as Ra'et, utilizing the sun, the Aten, to transmit their energy. And then Akut, the eye of Ra, the fire light of the sun, the flame goddess, the fire Uraeus or Arat on the crown of the Per'a and so forth. So when you see the illuminate one and the serpent power and all of that. That's what we're looking at. But that's also important for this time of the year. It's the most, just like the noon time is the hottest time of the day, the summer solstice is the hottest time of the year. We take advantage of that dispensation of fiery energy expended and dispensed to us from Ra and Rait. We take that in ritually so we can purify ourselves through that purificatory fire, empower ourselves, clear ourselves out, burn away impurities in conditioning, as well as if you have physical issues as well. So we invoke that power to ingest that energy, purify ourselves, burn away impurities, fire ourselves up, empower ourselves so we can blast through any obstacle that stands in our way. That's the purpose of that. Invoking Ra is Ra Aku, Ra'et is Ra'et Aket, and so forth, or Akut. That's part of a ritual process. So here we're just showing, some more of the symbolism and so forth. Just want to show this last one. This particular gua or seat in Akan is the Konton Krowi, the circular rainbow. But just like you have the sun and the moon in ancient Kemet, you have the rainbow serpent encircling the sun and swallowing its tail, so to speak, around the sun or the moon. In Akan culture, we say the Ahiniye Oria, Ahimaye Osarane, the king is the sun, the queen mother is the moon, so forth, the two great lights in the heavens. But you'll even see with regard to that, the sacred necklaces, the usek collar that you see. It references the same proverbial wisdom that you see in the Akan tradition. The king in this context is the sun, and the queen mother is the moon. And then the sacred rainbow collar you see is the rainbow around the sun and the rainbow around the moon. So when you see the king and queen mother sitting in state and so forth, you're seeing the energy that lights the day and allows us to move and operate throughout the day and so forth, that empowers us and edifies us. At nighttime is the light that shines the path so we can move around in darkness and not harm ourselves or suffer from attack from wild animals and so forth. We can defend ourselves because our path is lit. And it's the same thing with the ancestral spirits. They illuminate our path in the darkness so we can make proper decisions, but they also empower and heal and so forth. And that we're showing that usek collar and so forth, and that's what's going on. You'll also see another version of that usek collar with Ptah and Heteru. And you see these sacred colors. There's a reason why, there's the red, black, and green flag. Those are colors from ancient Kemet. And you see that around the necks of various divinities, Ptah, Heteru, Alsar, and so forth. So the red, black, and green flag is associated with these sacred colors is a sacred color scheme in the symbolism in ancient Kemet. You will also see, when we scroll back up, now when you look at the symbolism of the sun, the solar burst and so forth, the sunburst and all of that, and then we go back to the activists who decided to create the Juneteenth flag. And let me put that up. Okay, so now you can see, instinctively. Sometimes when people are doing these things, they do them deliberately because they've been studying things, and sometimes they would do these things instinctively. But there's a flag that's associated with Juneteenth. The central piece of the flag is a little star image with a radiant, glow around it, right in between the arc. We talked about the arc of the sun rising and sun setting and so forth. This is the representation of the summer solstice, the HEP period in reality. So even though it's June 19th, it's the day before the solstice, but this is a modern representation of the ancient, serpent around the sun, basically. This is what's going on. This is the HEP. This is another image of Ra. This is an image of Rait. In fact, I took these images on my iPhone when I was in Kemet. This was from the Valley of the Kings and so forth. And this is in Asediu, which is so-called Karnak, in the temple of Khonsu or Kainsu in the precinct of Mut. That particular place was closed for reconstruction or restoration, but we were able to get inside. And within the temple of Kainsu, you'll see this great image of Rait, the Creatress. There aren't a lot of images of Rait. There are many of them, but not as many as some of the other divinities. So we want to make sure we captured that and brought it back. So once again, this is Ra and Rait. Juneteenth is the summer solstice. It's the precursor to that. This is why we have a natural inclination, even if we don't, we politically, we would never set aside a day and say, this is the day that the whites in our spring decided to tell us that we were free. That's not a time for us to celebrate. But what we observe is the actual solstice. So all the energy that's moving around this time of the year for Black people is really coming from the solstice, the HEP, as opposed to quote unquote Juneteenth. So, and of course, the whites in our spring doing a national holiday, that was all politically motivated to get brainwashed Black people to support some of these criminals in office and all this other nonsense. So that has nothing to do with anything that's based in reality. That's just them being their regular criminal selves. But the energy associated with this time period is really coming from the solstice, and that flag is a representation of the solstice. And the solar disk, the Aten on the head of Ra, and the Atenit on the head of Rait. Aten and Atenit are the male and female deities of the sun in Kemet. Ra and Rait use the Aten and Atenit, the sun, as a physical transmitter of their spiritual energy. But they are not the sun god and sun goddess. Aten is the sun god. Atenit, she's the sun goddess. Ra and Rait will possess the sun just like a spirit can possess you, spirit possession. They possess the sun and use it to transmit their energy. So, but there's one other piece that we want to talk about. You'll see Amenhotep, son of Hapu, in that meditative posture. And we're talking about ritual to, take advantage of this time of the year and the energy of this time of the year. So let's get back to the HEP portion. When you see the way the term HEP is spelled, you see the little umbrella. You see the umbrellas held to shade the king and so forth. So it's turning point. That's the arc. That's the limit. It's also the same umbrella that's used for a kahibit, as you can see right here. Sometimes it's just that symbol itself to spell it. Sometimes they spell it out. Sometimes they simply use the symbol of the quote unquote shade. And you also have the kahibit of Ra, or the shadow of Ra, the shadow house of Ra, which is the temple and so forth. So let's look at what that is referencing. Hold on a second. Let me switch back over to this. Okay, so we're going to go to one of the documents that we published on in a particular class that we taught called Honam Su, talking about the spiritual anatomy. We talk about the Ba, Nika, Niaku, Ab, Hati, Sahu, Kahibin, and Sao, the different aspects of the spiritual anatomy of the human being, of Afurakani people, Black people. You have the Ka, which is the soul, divine consciousness, Kayat for females, women. Ba is the spirit, the divine living energy animating you, Ba'et for women, and so forth. You have the Yaku, Ab, and so forth. So we talk about the different aspects of your spiritual anatomy. And we also show they have the same names in the Akan language. But we're not going to go through all of those. We just want to get to the bottom. So you have the terms Kahibit and Shut in ancient Kemet, which are the terms for the aura. The Kahibit is the aura. And then the Shut is the term for the quote-unquote shade or the shadow. So you have your aura, the radiant force surrounding your body, and so forth. Just like the sun has a corona that extends way beyond the body of the sun, you have an electromagnetic field surrounding you, just like the earth has the magnetosphere surrounding it. Your aura, if it's seen clairvoyantly, as we said, can be a radiant, vibrant aura and so forth. It's called Kahibit in Kemet. But then you also have Shut, which is a term for the shadow, which is also actually a spiritual entity because your energy is invested in the dark shadow, and therefore it carries force and power. So, and we also show the Akan language representations of that. 1 second. Okay, so we say the determinative Meduta glyph for the term Kahibit is the sunshade, the umbrella, as we can see right here. The Akan term Chiniba is Chiniba, which is Chaiba in Kemet, Chiniba in Akan. The root Chim means to turn, round, revolve, wheel. Let's go back up and see that. So that Chiniba is the umbrella, the shade that, is held over the sovereign and so forth. But that root to turn, twist, to wind, and so forth, to turn, round, revolve, wheel. And of course, that goes back to HEP, meaning to turn round, to turn back, or go back, and so forth. Once you hit the point, then you go back. So when the entry says human life is not standing but turning, revolving, in a spiritual sense, it represents the energy revolving around the entity, the aura, the solar fire energy. There's the medut of the solar disk spelling out the word Kahibit, showing, the solar energy of the aura, the way it's spelled with this circular circle with the dot in the middle. So that's the glow emanating from the individual that can be seen clairvoyantly. It's the electromagnetic field that is the first aspect of the person that can sense or feel the projections of others and so forth. So that's the aura. Analogically, when the solar energy it surrounds the individual, a shadow is cast. The dark figure projecting the specific form of the individual, the dark side of the aura, has spiritual implications as well. This aspect of the spiritual anatomy is called the Shut in ancient Kemet and vocalized as Sum Suma in Akan. So you see Shu in ancient Kemet, the shade or shadow. Sum Suma, the shade or shadow in Akan language. Now, we're talking about the language itself, but spiritually it references, and Kesua means an egg, but it's referenced the auric egg emanating from the individual, as well as the dark egg of the shadow. Rituals are performed to affect the sunsuma or shadow and thus the energy of the individual. And we're showing here the circular serpent surrounding its tail, surrounding the individual in the context of the aura. But you also have this shu emerging from the shrine in command. There's a chapter in the Runu Perk Imheru, Book of Coming Forth by Day, that talks about protecting the shoot or the shadow so it won't be attacked, because people utilize the shadow or the track of the shadow and so forth and put some energy or medicine towards that to affect the physical and spiritual body of the person. So your shadow is a portion of your spiritual anatomy, just like your aura is, just like your ka, your soul, your divine consciousness, the ba, the divine living energy, the aku, that illuminate force, the ab, the spiritual heart, and so forth. Every aspect of your spiritual anatomy is just like the different physical organs of your body, and they all have their function. Your spiritual organs that make up your spiritual anatomy are all part of you as well. And the shoot or the shadow is one of them. So we did a whole, that part of that 6-week course we did on the spiritual anatomy. One of those weeks we go into detail about the shoot and all of that. But all of that is important because when we engage the ritual process of Susu, of meditation, and we invoke Ra and Rait. So let's go back to that imagery. Hold on a second. Okay. So we have Amenhotep, the son of Hapu, sitting in his meditative posture. But when we go into meditation at the shrine or out in nature, at shrines in nature, the base of a tree, a river, directly under the noonday sun, on the HEP, on the solstice and so forth, that energy enters us and we invoke through Susu meditation. We invoke Ra, we invoke Rait. When I come, we would say Nyonkumpon and Nyonkunton or Oshumare, Odumare, Dan, Aidahuedo, and so forth. We're taking advantage of this unique dispensation of energy at this particular time of the year. Just like you take advantage of the sun during the day, just like you take advantage of, when the spring comes and, the rains come and you capture rain, not only to irrigate crops, if that was necessary where you were living, but you also capture rainwater for ritual purposes, for spiritual cleansing, for divination and so forth. We talk about rainwater and hoodoo and so forth. But just like you take advantage of the shift in energy in nature, we take advantage of this abundance of not just energy, but communing with the forces in nature that animate the solar disk, that animate the moon, that animate the earth mother and so forth. This is a good time for that kind of purification. Just like it's also, even just on a mundane level, you wouldn't go work out lifting heavy weights at midnight. You would take the time when it's abundance of solar energy and fire, and your body is filled up with that solar energy, and this region of the earth that you're living on is heated up and so forth. You have an abundance of that energy available. Then you go and lift heavy weights to do vigorous exercise and so forth. You take advantage of the cycle that you are in. This time of the year, this, the HEP, the summer solstice and so forth, this dispensation from Ra and Rait is very prominent. So we go into ritual practice, whether we're inside at the shrine or outside and so forth, and take that energy in. So that is what we wanted to share with everybody to give a better example, understanding. Hold on a second. Anybody have any questions in the chat room? Just let me know, post them in the chat room. We posted this yesterday. Let me Okay, so we posted this yesterday. We just started our 4-week meditation instructor certification course called SUSU. So you can become certified, so you can conduct, meditation sessions. You can contract with schools or places of employment when they have people come out to do a meditation session. They may pay you $100, $200 to do a half-an-hour meditation session for their team building exercise at a job, at a corporation, and so forth. Cultural organizations who start off a cultural event with meditation, just like now with Juneteenth or Kwanzaa or different events and so forth. Schools, after-school programs, human services agencies, people who have, programs for people who are going through drug rehab, and they have circles, or they have therapy, a group therapy, family therapy. They have circles. They'll have somebody come in to do meditation because it enhances learning outcomes, reduces stress, reduces anxiety, all these different things. So people pay $100, $200, $300 for you to do a session. You may contract with a after-school program to do once a week. You have a couple of programs once a week, or an in-school program, high school, colleges, and so forth. So some people get their certifications from other organizations, even though they may be teaching some misinformation. So we decided to put this certification forward. We've been doing meditation for 30 years, since 94. We've been teaching since 13,004, so-called 2004, for the past 20 years, when we first published information about meditation in 97, but then also with the Patah Sasatem in 04 and 05 and so forth. So we've been teaching for 20 years. So we decided to, normally we focus on the books that we've published and, the documentaries and the other courses that we have for people that ask for a certification course, so they wouldn't have to get, certification from other organizations. But once you have that credential, you can take that credential and, contract out and engage in entrepreneurship, but also you're impacting the community in a positive capacity. So the first 4-week course actually started yesterday. Susu is the Akan term for meditation, but we also show that Su is, the same term in ancient Khanid and Kemet. So that's the reason we utilize that terminology. In fact, let me just pull that up real quick. If you hadn't seen that particular document, hold on one second. Pull this up real quick. So in our course, we call the course Susu because we're, dealing with meditation in the Akan language. Susu, to measure. The term means to measure. Second. Plug in. Okay, the term Susu means to measure the depth of, to calculate the capacity of, to reflect upon, to meditate, and so forth. Then you see in ancient Kemet, the root term Su is also the term for measure. And the reason why that's important, when you're Susu, you're engaged in Susu, or measuring the depth of yourself, calculating the capacity of your spirit, reflecting upon the self, and so forth. Susu. That's a form of measurement. But when you look at the document further, then we go into the etymology of the term meditate. And of course, it means to contemplate and so forth, but it's from the Proto-Indo-European root med, which means take appropriate measures. But of course, it's not a Proto-Indo-European root. They stole the term from our ancestral language of Kemet. This is why meh in Kemet is the term for the central unit of measurement in Kemet. So the measurement for temples and tombs and shrines and roads and everything else and colossal statues is meh. in English, they call it the royal cubit or the cubit itself. But in our language, we call it meh, the measurement principle. Meh was corrupted into med in Proto-Indo-European, which means to take measure. And then med is the root of meditate and so forth, which means to measure. The contemplating on yourself is taking measurement or taking stock of yourself. So we show the etymology of that just to show the reason we use susu, that is the expressive operationalizing of, hold on a second. Operationalizing of that notion of measurement. And when people hear the term meditation, they have a number of different things that they've heard all their lives, misinformation, ideas, and imagery of that, typically coming from Asia. So, but when you hear the term susu, and we introduce meditation as susu, the only definition they have of susu is the definition that we provide, and it's talking about measurement from the true sense, calculating the capacity of yourself, measuring your thoughts, intentions, and actions against the standard of natural order and so forth. And if you're out of alignment with order, you have the ritual practice to realign yourself with order. And even on just a mundane level, in an introductory fashion, when we, talk about this information and go into schools and organizations and so forth and places of employment, they've already shown, and this is the reason why people are starting to incorporate this in schools for youth, as well as adults in colleges, as well as in places of employment, because it enhances learning outcomes, attention span, the capacity to retain information, function better at your occupation, studies, reducing stress, anxiety, assisting with weight loss, a number of different things. So it's immediate tangible benefits, and this is why people are beginning to utilize that. So we want to give a proper definition. So when we say susu, and we give this definition initially, it reorients their entire focus to what it really is. So, okay, so yes, we started that 4-week course yesterday. So there are two things. Yesterday, we also put out, because people were asking, some people were not able to start last week or this week. So what we decided to do was do another 4-week course that starts July 1st. So when you look on the website, you'll see, as a matter of fact, let's just go to the website real quick. Okay, so when you go to the website, you'll see that we did a few lives on different aspects of meditation. We talked about the female divinity, for example, Merit Segert, who's the female divinity of meditation and silence. She governs that sacred mountain range, the gateway to the ancestral realm in ancient Kemet and so forth. She governs the epiglottis in the body. So we go into some detail about that, but you'll see the new flyer. Well, that's the previous flyer, but the new flyer for July 1st through July 22nd. So that is Monday, July 1st, and it's each Monday, the 1st, 8th, 15th, and 22nd, Monday evenings at 8 p.m. And at the end of the course, you get your certificate, and you can utilize that as the credential to, contract out and you generate income, but also you're impacting the community. So, and some people will end up branching off and simply doing that full time. If you have one school per, day, or one after school program per day, or, like social services agency or women's shelter, or, therapy group per day and so forth, or different cultural organizations, you may generate $600 or $700 or $800 a week. And some people just will do that as their form of employment or, supplemental income. Okay, so July 1st. So when you look on the website, you will see The cost of the course is $399, basically $99 per week. And once you start, and we have a split payment option. You can pay $199 up front to register and secure your spot, and then you can pay the other $199 in a couple of weeks and so forth. But you'll notice after the course is done, within the first couple of weeks, when you schedule your first session at an organization or an event or whatever, the first couple of $100s that you get paid will have covered the course within the first couple of events that you have. But we noticed that people are charging thousands of dollars for, certifications for meditation or yoga and things like that. People can teach yoga, that can be beneficial as well. When you go to most schools, organizations, places of employment, and you're talking about something that will focus you and enhance learning and, reduce stress and so forth, yoga can do those things, but most people initially are not able to move in that fashion when they first start. So if some place of employment said, hey, we're going to have this seminar, we want somebody to come out and teach something about mindfulness and to enhance our performance at work and increase our sales and so forth, people are stiff. They're not able to immediately start doing yoga postures and so forth. But anybody, whether it's a child or an adult, can sit and engage the SUSUW process, the measuring process, the measuring the depth of the self process immediately. They don't have to fold their legs. They don't have to be limber. They can sit, just like one of the reasons that we show this image. They can be seated in a chair, just like Amenhotep, the son of Apu, and so forth, and immediately start the process. So, okay, the question was in the chat room, do men only invoke masculine deities and women only feminine? No, you're invoked and you're informed by both. No different than, and we always, can utilize, our physical, real lives in the tangible sense as a mirror of what's happening spiritually. You can go, if you had some question about some issue, and you can sit down in front of your father, your grandfather, and he can give you some important advice. And then you can go to your mother, your grandmother, and she can give you some guidance from her perspective, from a feminine perspective, and different insight on a specific issue and so forth. And you're communicating with your mother and father or grandmother and grandfather in the same context. When we pour libation or invoke the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, we invoke the male and female forces because they both have something to contribute. We have Patriclan. We have a Patriclan divinity as well as a Matriclan divinity, the spiritual force that animated the sperm cell, the Patriclan divinity that's governed us for thousands of years in our clans. And then we have the Matriclan, the female divinity, that's the spiritual force that animated the ovum cell, that has governed and protected our Matriclan ancestresses and ancestors for thousands of years. They both combine their energy to make up who we are. Just like you have a Y chromosomal DNA from the father and mitochondrial DNA from the mother, you have a spiritual force that animates the Patriclan and a spiritual force that animates the Matriclan. That's a male and a female divinity whose energy combines to make you who you are. So, okay, so you said there's an unusual amount of young Black atheists. I try and show how their science proves the supreme being. How can I show Kemet in America first in any literature? So download our books for free on the website. Let me show that website real quick. So this is the Nhoma page on our website. We are shifting. For years, we printed out our own books and shipped them ourselves. We're shifting them over to Amazon, so they will print them out and ship them from there, so we don't have to continue to print and bind and ship in-house any longer. So we're waiting on that process. But the ebook versions, which is the full version, but the ebook versions, we've always had them on the website as free downloads from the site. So you can always download the ebook versions, and you'll see the book covers for all 31 books on this page. And you can download those and share those. Even just a book like African Presence in Early America, which was edited by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima and so forth. They have a number of different scholars talking about those things. So basic information like that. They came before Columbus by Van Sertima, but Africa's Presence in Early America, which was published a number of years, like 20 years later, with new information and new research and so forth. A number of different, authors, scholars, weighing in on that. Give that kind of information. There are people online talking nonsense and just, preaching, talking crazy based on self-hatred because they want to pretend like our people never came from the continent of Afuraitkaitnit. They don't even know the origin of the term Africa. That's one of the books that we published, as a matter of fact. When you hear us say Afuraitkaitnit, we show the etymology of the term African, where it actually comes from. Afura is a title of Ra. Afurait is a title of Rait. Ka and Kayet are the terms for the highland, raised land, the original land. So the Ka of Afura is Afuraka, the land of the Creator. The Kayet is the land of the Creatress. So this is why you hear us say Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, meaning African. But we go into a lot of information about that in the 31 books. You can download all of them for free. We also have online courses separate from the certification course, but our online courses on the Akongwa Suya page on our website. When you scroll through, that's just a collage of the different ones. When you scroll through, you'll see that all the various flyers from the previous courses, they are all archived now. So we actually have 40 online courses. Most of them were either 6-week courses or 4-week courses. A couple of them were 7-week courses. One is a 13-week course and so forth. But you can go on the page. You'll see that, these 4-week course, 6-week course, 7-week course, whatever it is, you can purchase that, and we'll send you the links and the password so you can access it, unlimited access and so forth. But these were courses, teaching culture and cosmology and language and things like that. The difference between the certification course, this is giving you a certification so you can go out and actually teach and conduct these sessions. The 40 online courses in our institution that we've taught over the past number of years, this is something for your own personal edification to study and learn about cosmology and language and the nature and function of the divinities and our different ancestral religious practices and nation building and a number of different things. So that's on the Akongwa Suya page on the website. Okay. Okay, so I just want to make sure we didn't miss any other questions before we. Okay, yeah, no problem. Any other questions before we end the live? And of course, this live will be posted on our channel. So if you want to direct people, if they, people didn't know about it, they can come to the page and so forth. All right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and end it here, but we do have a few spaces left for the new July 1st course. Now, for those we had our first, certification course session yesterday for this 4-week course, and it goes from yesterday to July 9th, and it's every Tuesday. If you prefer to jump on that class, you missed one session, but of course it's, saved. So you would get that. If you prefer to take the, certification course and complete it by July 9th, you can do a late registration for that one. And that's still up on the website. If you want to do that, or if you prefer you can wait until you can take it, a week and a half from now, July 1st, and start on July 1st. So either way, you can still do that. So we do have some spots open, so you can secure your spot for either one of the certification courses. Both flyers are still up. The original one that was June 18th through July 9th, and then the new one that we posted yesterday for July 1st through July 22nd. Both of them are still on the page. The original one's going to be down by the end of this week because most people who are taking this one are already in that one. But we did give that option. We told people last night, if people still wanted to jump on the first course, you can do that. Or you can wait till July 1st and do that one. All right. Okay, so again, yet I'll say we thank everybody for joining in with us. And Yebeshia Bio, we will meet again. That's it.